A Catholic priest spent over 2 decades getting punched, thrown, and bloodied in a wrestling ring, and almost nobody in his own church knew it was him under the mask. Not his congregation, not the families he baptized. He kept it hidden for years, and the way it finally came out wasn't a scandal. It was an accident, over the phone, and it changed his life completely. We'll get to that moment. But first, you need to understand why a priest was wrestling in the first place. His name was Sergio Gutiérrez Benítez, and before any of this, he wasn't exactly headed for the priesthood. He grew up in Hidalgo, Mexico, one of 17 kids, and by his teens, he was already deep into drugs and alcohol. By 18, he'd call himself a thief. It's not the resume you'd expect from a future man of the cloth. But something in him cracked open, and he chose to walk away from that life. He got clean, joined a religious order, studied theology in Rome and Spain, and eventually came back to Mexico as a priest. That's where the story could have ended, a quiet redemption arc. Instead, it turned into something almost nobody would believe. Sergio founded an orphanage in Texcoco called La Casa Hogar de los Cachorros de Fray Tormenta, and at its peak, it housed over 270 children. Running a home for that many kids costs real money, and church funding wasn't going to cover it. So Sergio made a decision that sounds like fiction. He remembered an old Mexican film he'd seen years earlier about a priest who became a masked wrestler to support an orphanage. He decided to actually become that person. He designed his own mask, red and yellow. Red for the blood he'd spill in the ring, yellow for the energy he needed to bring every night. He picked a name, Fray Tormenta, Friar Storm. And then, before dawn most mornings, he trained for hours in the gym, finishing just in time to say 7 a.m. Mass. Sometimes he showed up to hear confessions with bruises he couldn't explain. For years, he kept his two lives completely separate. His parish had a mild-mannered priest. The wrestling world had a fierce, mysterious luchador nobody could identify. He held on to that secret for a long time, until one phone call blew it up. Another wrestler called to book him for a Saturday match, and Sergio, without thinking, said he couldn't make it because he had a wedding to officiate. The wrestler paused and asked if he was actually a priest. Sergio asked him to keep it quiet. He didn't. By the following week, everyone knew. You'd think that would have ended his wrestling career, or at least his standing with the church. It did the opposite. His congregation didn't turn on him. If anything, people respected him more once they understood what he'd actually been doing with those bruises and those early mornings. He kept wrestling for over 20 years, and he kept funding the orphanage the entire time, all while still serving as a priest, sometimes blessing weddings and baptizing children of fellow wrestlers along the way. And here's the part that closes the loop all the way back to where his story started. Remember that old movie he watched as a young man? The one about a wrestling priest? The one that gave him the idea in the first place? His own life ended up inspiring the exact same kind of story right back. A French film told a version of it in 1991, and in 2006, his life became the loose inspiration for an American comedy you've probably seen, starring Jack Black, called Nacho Libre. Sergio didn't become a priest to become famous, and he didn't become a wrestler for glory either. He did it because 270 kids needed somewhere to sleep and something to eat, and he was willing to bleed in a ring at 4 in the morning to make that happen. He's in his 80s now, and he's still connected to the orphanage he built out of nothing but a mask and a decision to help. He inspired a movie because a movie inspired him first. That's not a coincidence. That's just what happens when someone commits to helping people for long enough. The story writes itself.